Hey, it's been a minute. We've been away for a while, but we a while ago we talked to Stephen Bulger, who's a good friend of Chris's and a guy very well known in the world of photography. He has a gallery in Toronto, and Chris and Stephen go back a long ways. They were roommates in university for a bit, and they're good friends in life in Toronto and see shows together. And so it was good for me to sit back for a while and to listen to the banter. And then of course we dug into what Stephen gave us, and we made a playlist for him. So yeah, sit back and enjoy. It's a good chat with our friend Stephen, and very interesting fellow who absolutely loves music all the time. So yeah, here we go. Now, I've done some reading on you, Stephen. I know some of the art in the photography background, but Chris has filled me in a little bit of the music background and very little. And I just know that you've had a lifelong interest in music. But one thing that I remember reading something and someone asked you about your start in photography and your love of photography, and talking about your mother took photographs and then she would use that kind of as a starting point for her paintings. And yep. And I'm just wondering, so she kind of helped you, well, with your interest in photography and the arts. Did that also carry over to music, or who was the person that, like when you're growing up, there was music in the house, and who was kind of driving that bus for you, initially before you, got your own, compass per se?
Well, it was sort of both my parents. Like my mother had wide tastes in music, but a lot of classical and opera, where my dad was more like Neil Diamond and Tom Jones and Frank Sinatra, who Mom also loved, right? Because she had more encyclopedic of, but that was, so at home a lot of the time, especially, when I was really young, it would be, if you're at home with Mom, it would be classical and opera. And if you're in the car, it was always, like Tom Jones and like those guys. So and I think that's why I've got fairly eclectic taste. So over the years, I've sort of filled in the middle, but I do go from like classical to popular and almost everything in between.
Chris?
So you built a dark room in your basement.
Yeah.
Not too far or directly adjacent to your record collection.
Yeah, it was pretty close.
Were there any albums that you had as go-to if you had to concentrate in your dark room, and you were putting your work together, doing a little bit of chemistry? Was there a go-to record that you liked more than others, or was it a bit of a free-for-all, or was music even a part of it, or would you just have to focus on your photography and not have music on as part of that experience?
Well, it was sort of in terms of the albums that I was listening to because the darkroom went in the summer after grade 9.
Yeah.
And so like by that point, like most of the records in the house didn't belong to me. So it was either, my brother or sisters or my parents. Yeah. So, and I think it wasn't until, I think it was like in grade 10 or 11 when we moved the stereo downstairs, because the stereo was sort of up on the first floor before it hit the basement. So early days of using the dark room, like actually not much music. And I can't even remember if I had a radio in there with me. Likely, but I can't say for sure. And then later, though, when I was at Ryerson, there would be, it was depending on how much printing I needed to do or the type of printing, or, and by that, I mean sort of what stage of printing I was in. Like when you were making, contact sheets and, small prints, I tended to listen to very fast-paced music because I really wanted to sort of keep up with it and get a lot of stuff done. But by the time I had slowed down and there was like a handful of pictures that I wanted to make really good prints of, it would be more like Brian Eno than
Okay.
um,
Oh, yeah.
Who were your fast go-tos when you were working with a pace? Who were you listening to then before the Brian Eno phase?
well, one Tito Puente was someone that, and I still listen to a fair bit of Tito actually. But yeah, because it's just really like going full blazes, whether it's in the studio or live. In terms of, I only have a handful of albums by him. I look for them, but I don't seem to find them.
And you talked about brother and sister are older.
Yeah, I'm fourth of 5 kids.
And were they so at the when mom and dad did not have control of the record player, then obviously it went there's a pecking order, and I'm sure that they got first dibs in terms of which records were going on. Were they influencing you much, or is there anything that they kind of passed on to you an interest, or did they play stuff that you're like, I can't do this? Yeah.
Oh, well, no, that it would, I remember especially that in Coburg, where we would go in the summer, that there used to be a bunkie that was separate from the cottage, and that was sort of the kids' hangout. And a lot of times I wasn't allowed in. And they collected mostly 45s. And so they'd be having a riot in there doing, I still don't know what, to be honest, playing 45s. And oh, what's that? That the one that used to fascinate me was Crimson and Clover. Like I remember that even now, like thinking if I close my eyes that I'm like remembering hearing that through the walls of the bunkie, and just inside.
What a great visual of you being locked out of the bunkie for the summer vacation.
Well, and then one time I got a hold when there was my parents, because it was just one of those little handheld, or not handheld, but like portable 45 players. So that's what was in that room. And then the family stereo was in the front room. And I remember when, I guess I don't know if it was when the Beatles' Red and Blue albums came out. I think it might have been. But anyway, the start of the song Help, that sounds like the James Bond theme.
Yeah.
I would play that over and over and over again. And they locked me in the front room and were trying to get me to stop, but I did it for like an hour, apparently. I just kept playing the first, 45 seconds of that song. Might be why now I like Philip Glass quite a bit. And right.
Steve, you're also a big film buff. You were certainly when back when we used to go see movies. Although I'm not a big film guy myself. You and soundtracks must play an important part relating to the images that you see on screen. And one that I can think of for myself is the soundtrack to the film Down by Law, with starring Tom Waits, but also featuring in the opening. And that the song paints a perfect picture of what you're seeing on screen. To my mind, it was just something that just was. It was the first time that I ever remember completely relating the music to the visual. Is there another film for you where you were listening to the soundtrack and said, this is it? I mean, this is just absolutely a perfect connection between audio and visual.
Well, I still think like 2001, like I think that's an inspired use of, and that was his second choice. Like someone else had completely done the soundtrack for that film. And apparently like a week before the first screening, the composer found out that his soundtrack was no longer part of it. He's using Strauss.
Wow. Oh, yeah. That's a bit of a burn.
Oh, no kidding. Oh no, when movies, I remember, who's the filmmaker that did the movie Almost Famous? Can't remember his name right.
Oh, Cameron Crowe.
Yeah.
Thanks, Cameron Crowe. And, but apparently when he was using the song, Elton John song, Tiny Dancer, he was like desperate to use that song for years in some movie, and had always worried that someone else was going to use it before him and he wouldn't get the chance. And then he finally did the movie with the scene where it worked really well in that bus as, you know, they're going along for a rough night. It's ingenious sometimes how they just, well, and what was that movie about the teenage pregnancy? Because that was the first time I heard the Moldy Peaches. And I thought that
Knocked Up, I think.
Juno,
yes.
Oh, Juno.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, but I loved how they used that music in that movie.
Yeah, that was a good one. And I remember Zach Braff, Garden State. He introduced me at that time, the Shins and a bunch of those, and that was a big part of his film. But you know, going back to Almost Famous, I'm obsessed with that film. Like that's in my top 10 for sure. And then, you know, a lot of things Cameron Crowe, Say Anything, and a lot of his stuff just really appeals to me. But that scene on the bus, it wasn't supposed to take that long, but he said, we got something here. Like as soon as he went with it, and they shot like 2 days that scene, because he just had to get it all. And then the one guy, their manager or their techie guy, he definitely was like a roadie guy, is actually a punk rock roadie. Like he was the real deal. And he fucking hates Elton John. And he almost walked off because they were doing this for 2 days. He had to sit in the bus.
That'll do it.
John, great photography collector, so I'm a big fan.
Hey, Steve, I'm curious to know if you're looking at a new image, a new photographer, or a new collection that you're having a peek at. Have you ever looked at a photograph and immediately thought of a piece of music that you like? Has a photograph ever said, "Oh wow, that's, you know, that kind of reminds me of a song," or is there anything that you went, "Hey, holy crap, that's you know, something that reminds you of it," or is the inverse true? Has that happened?
Yeah, I don't think I've ever looked at a photograph and thought of a particular song, unless, you know, I deal sometimes in rock and roll photographs. So certainly, like, help someone put together like a room, and it's this great room that has these rock and roll photographs on it that, you know, from about 15 different photographers. And it was great putting that together. So even though I don't know what song they're performing, there's songs that I'm thinking about when I'm looking at those, you know, because I see what, you know, the assembled band is, and you try to, looking at their instruments, you're trying to figure, oh, I'm wondering if they're doing this song. And so that, and I don't really think through it. It just seems to happen more intuitively. But no, I don't think it's happened that way, actually.
No, cool.
Hey, you mentioned someone asked you about how do you decide what you want to show? Like what turns you on in terms of photographs? And then you go, oh, I could show this. I want to show this. And you said, anything that's excellent, anything that fascinates me. Does that carry over to the music world in terms of, you know, what band or group or singer has just right from the get-go, you said, this individual fascinates me, this sound fascinates me, and you just knew you had, like, you were into it right from the get-go?
Yeah, I would say certainly Brian Eno, like the first time, like, and I bought the first album as a fluke, like talking about films, like I was actually influenced by a lot of the staff picks in different record stores, because I figured, you know, these guys must know what they're talking about. They certainly seem to act like they do. So
the arrogance level.
Yeah.
But I was like, you know, that they're putting their name on these albums, and music for films was like the first one. And I was just like, and then when I listened to it, I was just like, well, what movies are these in? And But I was mesmerized by the album, and then, you know, more albums by him and more music like that, which was different than anything else I'd been listening to prior. Although because I think it's on Music for Films, and it's the Brandenburg Concerto where it goes through these loops. And I remember that was one, you know, I was trying to share that with my mom, and she was just like, I think I much prefer the original Brandenburg Concerto, but I appreciate what he's doing. But I think she was happy to see that I hadn't, you know, but she did rub off on me in that way. That was, I think, where it wasn't something she was forcing me to. Like, I was presenting her with something new in a musical area that she was really fond of.
She must have felt pretty good, because the fact that she knew that she had a lasting effect on you, you know, in terms of her musical taste, and you still hold on to that, and it's something that still turns you on, you know.
No, exactly. Yeah, it's great the way you can share music like that. And it's fun, and with Catherine now, that she was saying not so long ago that one of her favorite things is when we're in Coburg, which is where most of the albums are now, and I pick something out and put it on because I'm playing it for us, and and we really like that.
So I'll stick with running with that theme. Your wife, the brilliant Catherine Lash, together, you two have curated an interesting collection of wedding imagery over the years. Some very cool photos from all years, different cultures. Very cool. I mean, a beautiful collection of wedding photos. So thinking about the wedding theme, a 2-point question: what song should always be played at a wedding, and what song should never be played at a wedding?
Well, I never thought about that one.
You started it with the collection, not me.
Yeah, no, exactly.
This is your fault.
I don't know if this messes it up with it, but
there you go. There.
Oh my. Oh, there we go. Jeez Louise.
So we have about 500 of them. It started as a process collection, but now it's going down different rabbit holes. Well, I'd say I would recommend what Catherine and I had just before the wedding march, unless it was in lieu of the wedding march. I'll have to double check that. But no, I'm pretty sure it was before the wedding march. The theme from The Friendly Giant, the flute piece.
I think it's Early One Morning. Is that the one? No?
That's the name of it. I always, and I should remember it but I always just think of it as the Friendly Giant song, because
I kind of had in my head more of the party type of song. Well, but I like where you're going with The Friendly Giant, because you know I'm a fan.
Well, I think should have. The one that you shouldn't. I don't know. Like, I have to say, like, I hate hearing. Not that I don't mind the guitar riff in it still, but I hate hearing "White Wedding" at a wedding. Not a wise choice, I don't think. It's a little too obvious.
I think I'm with you on that one. Yeah.
This is going to be an amazing mix. You're going to have Brian Eno and The Friendly Giant.
Well, I did play golf with him one time, so I'm sort of biased towards him for a couple of.
Bob what's his name? Bob Homme?
Yeah, Bob Homme.
Bob Homme, yeah.
You got such a good memory. That's one reason I'm so nervous with this. I was like, I'm not going to remember the people that I listen to when talking to guys, but.
Well, that's a miracle that I remembered that one. So who knows?
Stephen, how involved are you with new music? And the reason, well, answer this, and then I have a follow-up question to this.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to ask it a different way. Yeah, like I'm doing two things in terms of I've sort of given up on the radio. Like a lot of the radio shows I used to like just don't, either they've been canceled or they're on when I'm not awake. And in terms of new albums that I buy, that it tends to either be better pressings of albums that I really like, or it is some new music that I hear. Like I'm listening to a bit of Michael Kiwanuka, who I think is really very talented. I really like, I've got a couple of his albums now, I guess, but I like them quite a bit. That I listen to like St. Vincent almost like every other day. Like I think she's just remarkable.
Yeah, absolutely.
That it's a little hard to listen to Kendrick Lamar at work. But
well, you know, and the follow-up question that Stephen is that you when you first opened your studio, you said you had to educate people on photography because people were coming in and going, you have a studio that's just photographs? Like what kind, like how is this? And then and I've experienced that a little bit too, of having restaurants that are Italian, and we don't carry Pinot Grigio. We have Verdicchio and stuff like that. And people are like, where's the Pinot Grigio? You know, so we educate people in terms of like, well, this is actually called real wine. And but my question to you is that if you were to pass on some of your love of music and what you've learned from music, and I guess what it really boils down to is that, is there something that kids should be listening to that you think would really benefit them? And I guess part of it is my frustration with music today is that people love hooks. They don't love songs anymore. They don't love albums. They fall in love with a hook. Like they fall in love with just like one little snippet of a song. And to me, that's almost tragic. And I don't know, maybe just a commentary on like modern music and like what, like it would be nice, I don't know, your take on it, and what do you kind of miss from the past that we could really use again?
Well, I think it's like for me that I like listening to different types of music at different times of the day. That and it depends on the day. It's not that I start every day with classical and then go into jazz and then go into something faster paced near the end of the day. Like sometimes it's completely wrong. But I think it's good for people to try to match the mood with the music. And I guess that's also something that I do, like in terms of what I do for a living, because when I was young, another thing that I used to do, especially when I was trying to, avoid schoolwork, if I should be doing, grade 11 essays or something, instead of doing that, I would rearrange my room. And, I used to collect movie posters and, and also posters of like, other people's, good pictures of waterfalls and stuff. And I would just rearrange it, like, rearrange the pictures that are in my room. And if it was, a really big test coming up, I'd also rearrange my furniture. And that's usually when, mom would come up at around, 4 p.m. on a Sunday. And I've been in my room like since noon, apparently studying, and all she can hear me is like moving shit around. And I guess I just sort of institutionalized that a little bit in terms of what I do for my job. Like I think constantly trying to create an environment for myself that hopefully other people will like too.
Yeah, I guess, and that really answers the question, because it's actually making conscious decisions on music. Like a lot of people just put it on like the Spotify recommended playlist, or, like I actually actively take out an album, and I'll put it on. A lot of my music listening, because I have it at work all the time, but a lot of it's cooking. When I'm actually making a meal, then it's like, well, it makes any of that labor, even though I love it, much more rich, because the fact I've actually made a conscious decision of like, I'm listening to Genesis Duke this time, like that's going to happen,
Well, I'm lucky here that because I've got a turntable like 3 feet away from me right now that, so we get to, I get to listen to it all day if I want. Like sometimes it's just too busy to be flipping vinyl, but I enjoy it, that it gives a nice little break from emails. And, I try to keep it, because I got fairly eclectic tastes apparently. So I just try to keep it a little on the casual side, like nothing too heavy, crazy here, but with the exception of the one thing that I give myself, and it's a bit easier with COVID, I have to say, because, we're open by appointment. So it's not that, I'm not playing something hardcore, when there could be old ladies here or something. I've got the violent fence cranked, right? Like, but so it's nice. And what I do though is that, like, and I just did it a couple of days ago, because I bought some new albums. So I want to make sure that they're all in good condition. And if they're not, then I can take it back before it's 3 months later. And it's just like, hey, wait, this has got a skip on it. And, they're like, well, too bad. They must have done it.
Yeah.
I think an old habit from buying records from when I was younger, and, trying to take back an album when you're like, 20 years old. And, it's sort of a daunting thing, especially if you're medicated before you go to the store. But that's...
What did you buy?
Oh, just the other day?
Yeah.
I'd have to check they should be right.
And this, Chris, if we had sponsors, it'd be a great time to have a sponsor break.
This would be a good time to say, let's take it to.
Sorry about that.
Oh, wow. Great one.
I hadn't seen that on vinyl before. I think I got the CD when it came out, so I was happy to get that. This is my first Dolly Parton album. I've never bought her before. And
I don't think I have a Dolly album. Oh, St. Vincent. There you go. Yeah.
There you go.
Lovely.
And a reissue, like a new version of that.
Awesome.
We've listened to plenty of talking heads, which leads me to sort of another bunch of questions. But I'm kind of fascinated in the connection between musicians and photography, and I'm wondering if you're able to make a link between the connection of great musicians who have photography as part of their life. And I'm thinking of certainly Patti Smith and Michael Stipe, the late great Lou Reed, and David Byrne, who find another creative outlet in photography. And I'm wondering if music informs of photography, or photography, it's a bit of a chicken and the egg with a few of them. Obviously, Patti Smith's relationship with Robert Mapplethorpe is an incredible story, but also a great photographic story. The documentation of the early punk scene, of course, and all of that. But I'm really blown away by musicians who can take their creativity in a completely different direction and do it so well. I'm wondering, is there any secret sauce? Is there anything that you've considered that makes for a very cool connection between the two mediums?
Not really, because also you have to think about other people like Dylan that does painting, drawing, and sculpture, and Leonard Cohen did a lot of drawing and painting. I think it's with some people they're a lot more myopic than others. I think other people have the capacity in some cases to be able to pursue more than one career. Because it can be a very expensive thing to be an artist. Unless you can afford to, in some cases. So I think in many cases there's a lot of artists that need a different creative outlet. Like maybe they have to take a break from writing music and have to stop listening to things and maybe look at things. Or Fair instead enough. Of moving dials like in the studio, then you got to go out and you got to make something like permanent with your hands, that it's more three-dimensional. Like it's, I think it depends. But I don't know.
Fascinating.
Starts with one or the other, whether visual comes first or music comes first. I mean, it would be interesting to do a study to see, what the majority is, like what stream do people start in? Because to get back to the question about what to tell children, I mean, if there is a majority, like let's say, people say, oh, I always started with drawing, then that would be a great thing to teach kids. Like start with drawing.
Right.
And then who knows where that'll lead, right?
Oh, fantastic. What do you got, Bradley?
Well, I'm kind of curious about you and Stephen have had some musical adventures.
We have.
You have a classic story of a reggae band that camped at your house for quite some time. What are some of the more memorable, let's say memorable concerts, memorable music adventures, things that you're just like, I can't believe that happened. And it was like just one of those things that you'll never forget. You'll never even you can hardly fathom that happened to you.
Well, when you're talking like Messenger, that was a lot of fun. I got to say, that was one of the fun I had at Carleton.
We were at Carleton together, and Steve, being the generous soul that he is, always has been. I think the band's bus was parked directly adjacent to our room, and our room was annexed as the hospitality suite for the band. And when the show ended, they didn't seem to be in a particular hurry to move on, so they just stayed for a while. And Steve generously offered the accommodations to continue, and it was fantastic.
How long did this go on?
I should just say you should never really give like your month's stash to someone named Spliff. That's all I can say. That was a mistake.
I did wander into our bathroom, which we shared with the guy in the room next to. It was a sort of a shared bathroom, and there was about a 6'4" super friendly Rastafarian in the bath for a few hours a day. I've forgotten what that dude's name was. He loved the bath.
I can't remember. I wasn't your roommate. I was just sort of an interloper.
Well, yeah, you were the greatest influence of all time. We had there was a few road trips. We had a road trip to see in 1983, I guess, or maybe 84, a semi ill-fated road trip to see the Police in Syracuse.
Yeah, exactly. Synchronicity tour.
That was good fun. That was good. And lots of Toronto. That was the great thing about being a high schooler in Toronto. And we saw the I'm sure we saw the Beat a bunch of times together. And I
remember one for me and it was you and McDonald. I didn't know Billy Bragg until he was at Masonic Temple, and
yes.
So you called and we went, and I was just like, holy God, like I just he's still in pretty heavy rotation for me, like not extreme. Yeah, Greetings from the Brunette, like that's a good album.
We had Bowie Serious Moonlight in the summer of 82, 83. That was a beauty. And you gave me a call and said, hey, how about Peter Gabriel? It was outdoors on the waterfront.
Show.
It was superb. It was an absolutely you don't expect much from that venue, and the music, which Peter Gabriel's obviously deeply concerned about the musical experience, was note perfect. I was absolutely floored.
Oh, that was at the not at the band show at CNE. That was the one that Catherine and Carolyn came with. Like,
yes.
It was
that
at the amphitheater.
That's right.
Yeah.
But Tony Levin was with them. I mean, it was if I recall correctly. Anyway, it was terrific. But there were a few. I think we probably caught I can't remember. Things are foggy. Some of the shows are foggy, Steve. I don't know why. I have no explanation for why. I think we caught the Who together, and not to take too deep a dive in, but but a particular Neil Young show at Maple Leaf Gardens was fantastic too.
It was a good.
It was a great show, but it was I think it was 50% trans and 50% acoustic.
Yeah, exactly.
So certainly had lots of small gigs, lots of big gigs, and music vocabulary that is a great advantage of growing up downtown in a big city.
Oh yeah, exactly.
You know, something that we kind of carried on. Now, your galleries have been 2 on Queen Street and then 1 on Dundas West, both.
Mhm.
So Queen West. You were right in the heart of the sweet part of the city, as the song goes. But you lived so close to all these great musical venues and things, and I know you did take advantage of it. But you and I both, parenthood does kind of change that a little bit. Did you enjoy access to those places, just being so close, and the type of characters that would visit the gallery?
Well, especially because you can walk to everything. Like before, because when we were in high school, like it was still like the subway and the streetcar, right? And then it was sort of, and not so much, it was just more of a chore. Whereas, you can walk to the Horseshoe in 20 minutes. That's a real history. And yeah, to your point, I've always been very grateful to live in a city like Toronto that offers so much. I live 10-minute walk from the gallery. Like I like being able to have everything like around me. I think there's nothing like it in terms of, and it's interesting for our daughters too. Like they now have already decided that there's no way they could live in the country, because, would be happy to move out to Coburg full time.
Yeah.
The girls aren't very much interested.
Well, yeah, and that's a great teenager thing, but further to you having 2 teenage daughters, have they introduced any music to you that you like?
Billie Eilish, I think she's great. But it, and I think it's been Billie so far.
Okay. Is there and I had a whole bunch that I had to ban. Most famously, Caitlin and I discussed it at length of why the music can't be in the car. They brought some great pop sensibility to it, but is there any that you just can't take?
No, it's some of it I just kind of zone out. I find, I guess it's like, if it's music I don't like, I actually don't hear it. It's just noise. And not that it just it doesn't have to be like blasting anything, but just, and the same if it's like a bad picture, I just don't really even see it. Like I don't spend time with pictures, and I don't spend time listening to bad music. I just kind of zone out for a little bit. And also because I've never been good at catching lyrics in songs, with the exception of a handful of artists. But for the most part, I have very little, and I think it's because with mom listening to so much opera when I was growing up young, because I didn't speak any of those languages, so I never knew what any would. So I've always thought of the lyrics to be more like another melody line as opposed to words. Yeah.
Well, you were at a high school with so many Italian students, Steve. You'd think that the opera could inform the vocabulary that you had going.
I should have picked it up better, but.
Hey, Stephen, getting back to concerts, is there anyone that you saw in the past you're like, I really wish I could have that moment again? Or are you the type of person who's like, nope, I did it, and that was as good as it's going to get?
Could be one time I saw 23 Skidoo at the WOMAD Festival, I think in 1986 or something. Must have been like 2 or 3 years after we graduated from St. Mike's. So when was that, Chris? 84?
83.
83.
Yeah. So spring 83, we were out.
So I think it must have been in 86 or something. I think it was the second or third WOMAD festival, and I was in Europe, and it happened to be on when I was in the UK. So I went to it. It was terrific. And I had just a single album of 23 Skidoo at home. And I was like, oh, what are the odds? Like, you know, and it was the, you know, one act I was really looking forward to seeing. And I think it was like on the second day, maybe. And in a fairly small tent. And I got in just as the band before them, because I wanted to make sure I got a good spot, right? And I was surprised I walked into the tent, like I'm the only one walking in, everyone else is walking out. And the previous band is removing their stuff from the stage, and a few people start milling in, and then the band starts putting the stage together, and they started the performance as soon as the first person stepped on the stage. And they rotated instruments constantly, and they played a single song that they wove different excerpts of songs into this very long score that they had devised for the concert. And it lasted, I think, probably I think it certainly, I'm going to say it lasted 90 minutes. It could have been 60, but I was absolutely mesmerized. And it, because I remember I arrived there assuming there would be lodging, and there wasn't. And there was this guy that was on the bus, like as I was, going to Bath, that's where it is. And this guy was very talkative, a British guy, and he was like, "Oh no, there's nowhere to stay there, but you can stay with me." And I was like, "What do you mean there's nowhere to stay? Like I must." And he goes, "Well, no, I got a big tent. You can stay with me." I was like, "Actually, I think I may need to, because I didn't know what the hell I was going to do." And in the end, he was a fairly irritating person, and he knew that I was going to go to this concert. And about halfway through, like he came up and he goes, "Hey, they're really good, aren't they?" And I was like, "You got to stop! Like, get away from me!" And because I just took it all in, and I would love to relive that moment, but I don't think it's possible. And the one thing, I've never gone to see them in concert again, because I'm worried that I'd be disappointed. I'd had a couple of chances, and I was just like, no, I think for those guys, like just that one thing, it was perfection. So
yeah, it had to be Bath, it had to be a tent, and like all those things had to line up.
Oh yeah, and I wanted to see, these guys blowing instruments and blowing bones, and then they had the cellist that I guess was in the band that was there before come up, and it was really remarkable how they wove it all together. Like I was just amazed. It was like a punk jazz score.
Yeah,
I just never seen like it.
Steve, you came by your love for the WOMAD Festival, honestly, because would it have been the years before when we lived in an unfortunate home on the outskirts of Ottawa? But Brad, I do need to tell you that we've lost several damaged deposits together and things like that. That should be added to the resume. But Steve, you really took to that WOMAD record, and you sort of got me a little bit hooked onto that West African trance music that was a big part of that album that you had, that I think we listened to maybe 1,000 times because there wasn't a whole lot of schooling going on. But I think on that record, which I've tried since to find, it's really hard to find that particular, yeah. But since then, I've listened to Fela Kuti and some of the others that have really brought back that cool trancey vibe. So maybe it was that record. Did that record come before? I guess it would have come before your trip to Bath, because maybe that was 84, 85.
Yeah, that was done it's a double album.
Yep.
And it was done to raise funds for the WOMAD Festival.
Right.
And apparently it didn't raise enough, because afterwards, that's when Genesis got back together with Peter Gabriel, because he was broke and he needed money. So that's what they did, and it saved them. But so I think, oh no, so it must have been so that was called. Yeah, so I must have been to the 3rd or 4th WOMAD festival then.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
What a great experience. That's fantastic.
Hey, Chris, you were mentioning before, you had a question, and it's got to be you because I didn't quite get it. It's was Stephen always traveling and different influences, especially in his professional career. What was that about?
Yeah, I was curious to know, because in your line of business you've done so much traveling over the years, and I was curious to know the type of music that that you're listening to when you were, say, if you're in Paris or something like that. Are you necessarily listening to Serge Gainsbourg, or are you? It's pretty saucy music. I don't know. Serge Gainsbourg is sort of a French lounge singer, but he's my favorite French performer. But Steve, are you listening to, if you're making music portable, back when you were traveling extensively for work and looking at collections and things like that, are you necessarily getting on top of the music from the country you're in, or are you listening to your old favorites? Are you exploring music to get a little bit of the flavor of where you are?
Yeah, like I will listen to the radio when I'm traveling, just to get a sense of what's there. And when I can go and see if I can experience some music, like try to go a day early or leave a day after, so you can have some sort of buffer. So at least you have one day where you can do something, go to a museum, go to a concert, go to a performance, like, so it's, and then sometimes like one time that I was in China and I was brought to a local Chinese opera that was unreal. Like, because I'd never seen Chinese opera before, and it's this cacophonous sound. And but the audience, it was like so great because the performers mix with the spectators, and so there, people are running around, and it was a country outdoor thing, so it was very casual. And I was there on a photo festival, or as part of a photo festival, I mean, and we were introduced to, I guess it's a custom that for an event like that, to the oldest elders in the town. And they were reported to be like, 114 and 117 years old. And they sat at the front in the middle. And so I was just sort of behind them, like over their shoulder, and sort of between us was this, little kid, and they, like baby, like probably a year old or so. And, standing and walking a little bit, but they don't have any back on their clothes, right? Because they can just squat and do their business wherever and whenever they want, right? And they just do it all themselves, like, because you don't have to worry about it. There's no diapers or anything. And, so this kid is like peeing and defecating like right beside my foot. And I'm watching this display, and then I could go up and then and chat with the performers, like not, because they were fascinated in us. Like they were like, because I had a little Canadian flag on my lapel, and they're just, oh, Canada. Like it's just, it's fascinating. I didn't understand what was going in the play, but it was fascinating.
When you've been traveling in the country and you've been listening to the radio or caught a gig or something, is there anything, and any absolute gems that you found that you wanted to pursue, find the music or buy the music, or anything that's just absolutely just knocked you down?
Yeah, some. And it just, in the process is, though, I then try to, I wish I would do more research of it at the time, because it's been a very rare occurrence when I've been able to find the right album again. Like it just, like as a case of like, well, it wasn't a business, it was like a holiday in Jamaica. And there was a song that I heard, I'm in a Dancing Mood by Desmond Decker. And it was on a cassette tape that I had made years ago from a friend's collection. And, you know, the tape broke, and it was this one song I was like always wanting to get it. And I bought 4 different recordings of him singing that song on different albums before I found the recording that I knew is the one on the tape that I made like in 1989. Yeah, so it's, yeah.
Now your cassette tape collection was meticulously curated, and the sleeves of your cassettes were labeled in letraset.
Yeah,
Which for those people who don't remember, well, before laser printers or the magic of computers, letraset was a stenciled sheet with a bunch of A's to Z's, and you had to do it by hand. And yours were beautifully done. 2 questions: do you still have any, and do you still listen to cassettes?
I still have, you know, one thing of them, you know, one case. You know, it's down to one case, but no, that the machine's still there, but they're all like everything's dropped, right? Like it's nothing. Yeah. But so no, like it's nothing that I still listen to, but I still have more of them than I should.
Nice.
It's almost, I think it's almost risky to put one into an actual cassette player, because you're be terrified if it just splits, because you know the tape is so old, right?
Oh, exactly.
And also, you know, when you were talking about going to different places and getting into that music and bringing some back, I know from whenever you go to Hawaii, you're like, I love this music, and buy a CD or 2, and then you're driving around in Vancouver and like, this does not translate well at all. You know, like this is only my Hawaii music in Hawaii. Have you had any experiences of that where you brought back some music? Like, you know, I was thinking Jamaica. Like Jamaica is such a feel place, but you know, we do listen to a lot of that sound here. But music you brought back, you're like, no, that's a time and a place.
Yeah, there was this small town in Germany that I went to, and and it was, went into a little cafe, and this person was giving, a concert, and they had cassettes, and or no, it was a CD. It was a CD, and and I bought this CD, and it was just like, oh, and I, put it on for Catherine, thinking, oh, this would be great. It was such a great concert, and and she's sort of looking around, and about 30 seconds into it, I'm like, maybe this is the wrong CD. I don't know. I think we gave it a few songs, and then it was just definitely it was just something had changed. I don't know.
Yeah. Did you try to bring it back to life by making schnitzel and Bavarian lager and saying maybe that's what you needed, as a package deal?
Yeah, you need the atmosphere.
That could have been it.
Mr. Bingham, what do you any other gems you got in your pocket? Because I'm all music, I'm all questioned out.
Well, no, I think I am. I think that I think we've held Steve hostage for a very good amount of time. I think we covered a lot of bases.
It's been a long time.
It's when Steve says it's been a long time, it's been.
No, I didn't. You said I looked at it. That's,
funny. In the lead-up email, we always say, we'll take 30 minutes of your time. And I'm always like, that's a lie.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You guys longer than you're expecting.
No,
this is what we do. Oh my God.
This is exactly what we do.
And then in the second half, Chris and I will talk for about an hour and a half about our stupid music choices. And hopefully they aren't stupid, but we definitely ramble on quite a bit. Hey, I've got to ask you this, we've got a lot of, not a lot of specific band references, but a lot of mood and a lot of like situations that we can make a good playlist for you. But that's the whole idea, is that we're going to make a playlist for you based on what we've gleaned from this conversation. But what genre do you want? Is it going to be more upbeat, more mood, or you don't have to pick a genre. Like some people are like, yeah, just have at it. But do you have something in mind? You're like, God, I would like to give them this challenge of kind of nailing this.
I don't know I'm more interested in you guys turning me on to some music that I don't know, right? Like that's based on what we're talking about. Like in it, like play whatever tracks you want of anyone that I mentioned, because I'd be happy to listen to any of them. But yeah, if there's, especially people that we haven't talked about, but because we didn't even talk about like blues or any of that, right? Like that's so I'm open to anything really. Despite the poly thing, well, I guess I like good country, but I don't like a lot of the contemporary country music. That would be the only thing I wouldn't want to really listen to. Nothing against.
Yeah, I mean, we ski in the trees a little bit when it comes to our musical choices, and I'm sure that a few of our guests have been beyond dumbfounded at some of the things that we come up with. But there's a reason for everything, and a lot of it is exactly as you mentioned, where we kind of we get a feel, and we do pick some songs that you may not necessarily maybe we're bringing back some memories, or maybe we're giving you a whole new ball that you haven't a whole new bit of music you've never heard. So it's going to be a wild ride.
Oh yeah, no, I look forward to it.
Right on. Well, thank you very much for your time. This has been a treat. Chris has talked about you, and I did my research, and I look forward to coming to Toronto. And as Chris said, he said, "Oh, when you visit the gallery, you're going to see so many great things." I'm like, oh, I think I might spend all of my money. So I look forward to visiting the gallery and seeing how much I spend at your place.
Well,
this one's been, like I said, I think this has been perhaps the most fun I had putting together a list, because the fact I went into this one quite scared, because the fact that Stephen quite well, and I think you could have done this before we ever talked to Stephen. You probably had half of your ideas were already there, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and that became problematic, to be perfectly honest with you, because I didn't want to necessarily go down a road. Music was, a big part of both of our lives, obviously, and we have lots of commonalities. So I was very careful not to go down common roads. I wanted to find out something. I wanted to go down a different road. So there's connected themes, but certainly in the selections, I was hoping to hit the refresh button and come up with something just ski a little bit off piste in terms of the music that we've either seen, enjoyed, or kind of shared together over 40 something years. 40.
What's funny is that I don't know how we do it, because I think we listen to somewhat similar, but your music is vast, and so many aspects of music, and mine is much more narrow. But when I looked at, and to the one viewer out there, we do not look at lists before, like I submit my list pretty much at the same time you do, or else you've already had yours done. And I look at it, I'm like, he said Lou Reed, I went Velvet Underground. You went Japanese composer, I went this Japanese guy. African sounds, there it is. I'm like, oh my God, we were definitely both in the same room with Stephen. Like we were actually listening, and
we were paying attention. I saw yours, went, oh my God. I mean, it's funny, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I think that we caught on to the same wave, and I think we took it in the same direction. Not a ton of things that were different in either thematically, musically, or from a composer performance point of view. So I thought your list was awesome.
Well,
I listen to your list exclusively, and I'd be happy with it.
Well, I've been playing in the car. Like as soon as I get your list, I put them all together, and it goes in the car, and that is like, and it's going back and forth. And so in any event, my themes for Stephen were kind of you two being jackasses together, and him. Things are. For some reason, I think of his art world, his photography, like the studio. entertaining people, being part of many different milieus. So it is like he said, he's all over the place in terms of like he's in this mood and different times of the day. And I lead it off with you know, a funky Afro beat by Ween called Voodoo Lady.
Absolutely.
And it's congos and it's those guys just singing boogie woogie woogie. Like, you know, it's just like, it's kind of a goofy stuff, but it's one of those things where it's just like, you're just in the mood to have fun. And, you know, and I think, and now it's been a while, but he did talk about like some serious African influences in traveling there. And of course, now, a 23 Skidoo, I definitely, Skidoo 23 or one, I looked that up and it was hard to pull a song off that because as Stephen explained, it was like, it's an experience. I think you got to be there, you know?
Exactly.
Listening to that as a standalone thing, it's like, I think there's more to this that probably takes drugs and a chatty guy that you just meet on the bus or the train or whatever. It's just like, there's got to be a whole bunch of shit going on that you're just kind of just holding it together.
Yeah, the you could just see the giant marble in the Plinko machine, and it has to deflect off all of the right pieces to get into the slot of perfection. And it seems like Steve's story tells it that way, that it was just, if one thing didn't happen, it wouldn't have come out.
It would have been a total disaster. He would have been sleeping in a field. It would have been the worst night of his life, but something just fell into place. And then I think about, as you know, I love my research, and Ween, you know, these are two guys that met in high school typing class, and one guy was more jocular, and the other guy was, you know, a bit darker and more of the artist type. And initially they didn't like each other, but then they started talking music and they got this connection. And their early stuff was all just, you know, drug-enabled nonsense, as most bands are.
Sure.
But they had to come up with a name. And Ween is derived from the word wuss and the word penis.
I didn't know that.
So as you listen to these tunes, just know that this is
I learn something new every time with you. It's like sitting with Brian Lanahan. Your research is impeccable.
Well, I think it's more idiot savant type of stuff. It's not going to help you in life. Okay, all you. What do you got?
You know, I led with the power pop late 70s tune Art School by The Jam. And the reason I picked that one is because when Stephen had the great revelation that he should be in a art school, mainly focused on photography, it really seemed to be sort of a great pickup and watershed decision for Steve that set all the dominoes up for all the good things to come future. So I mean, we both like The Jam as a great high school type of band. I was a big fan of that mod movement anyway. Steve, I know Steve loved The Jam as well. And I went with that one, and it was purely thematic. It was a choice that I used to sort of set the story from, say, 1984 moving forward, as opposed to anything else before. I just use it to sort of set the pace for the way Steve made that decision to go to art school and just make it happen from the ground up. And I love the song. It's I mean, I love the band, of course, my all-time favorite band, but that one just seemed to speak to me. It did the trick, and I think he'd like it. I think he'd like it to be in that.
Well, you know, with being, you know, Stephen being in his profession, and you just bump into people that change your lives, or things have to go right, and you know, for the studio to work out and to make decisions to move the studios here and there, and the Jam were right place at the right time. You know that they were busking on the streets in Soho, and someone came along, liked them, and said, "I need an opening act for the Sex Pistols tomorrow." That was their first big break.
100 Club days.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's They were, it's an interesting story. Certainly, Weller's a complicated fellow, and his musical incarnations moving forward have always been a bit disruptive, and just parking the Jam at the absolute height of their popularity and moving on to a completely new project was difficult for a lot of fans. But I think it was his only way to continue in music, leaving sort of Buckler and Foxton a little bit high and dry. But it was just, I guess it was his way of music survival, is to, I think he saw that they had done what they needed to do within the context of that musical movement. And he just I mean, how often do you see a musician change gears as hard as Weller did?
Change gears in terms of, like, he changed his attitude, though, in a certain sense. Like, he was making statements with the Jam, and then Style Council was a lot of happy thoughts.
Very European, very, very fashion sensed music, a completely different attitude than lyrically, like, sticking your face in the grind, and a lot of political punches as well. He moved into a completely different direction, and I think he rationalized it as being a way for him to cope. But the music, still was immensely popular. I can't say that I was a huge fan of that, because it just didn't speak to me in the same way. I had zero sense of style and zero sense of fashion, and anyone could tell you that. So it didn't fit my particular mindset at the time.
Yeah.
So, Setting Suns remains to this day my all-time favorite record ever made. And I would say I listened to that one end to end more than any other record in my collection.
Yeah.
I probably
and
worn out 4 or 5 copies. It's just a thing for me.
Yeah.
It's a comfort. I think it's a comfort zone.
Yeah. For you to go from that to, like, it's not what you signed up for Style Council. It's like, okay, I can't wait to see you next, see what you do next. It's like, that's not what
I couldn't see sitting down and really, Long Hot Summer, as musically great as it might be, I don't know. I just don't get it. It's just, Paul.
That's very true.
It's like, and I'm not cool enough, or, and I didn't have the clothes or the look or anything like that. So I couldn't even fake it. I couldn't, so I had to wait for the rebound. And, Weller, in his acoustic tours that he does, and I've seen him many times in his, I love it when he reaches back into the grab bag of Jam selections, because let's be completely honest, that's why I bought the ticket.
Yeah.
I didn't buy the ticket to hear anything else, but Saturday Boy, or, any of the other ones, Butterfly Collector, anything that he punches out that were very serious, heartfelt stands, whether social, political, or otherwise. So I remain a huge fan.
That carries over to Neil Young, because he was, for him, is like, you put on your song, and we can get to it, Sugar Mountain, and he used to play this to this day in his live concerts, and he says, it's not for me. It's actually for the audience. I wrote this when I was 19, but they came here, they paid their money. I'm going to be a little self-indulgent, but at the same time, it's like, they want to sing along as well, so.
Yeah. And so many people connect any song through any musician. So if you're going to pay your now $100,
yeah,
it's, you got to trust that the musician is going to pull that one out, and whether they hate it or don't hate it, it's made a good life for them. And I think they owe it to the people paying the $100, not to have a discordant 10-minute guitar solo in exchange for your money. I mean, people, it's like going to your restaurant and you plunking down a can of ravioli. It's not what you pay for. It's not the experience that you buy in for.
Good margins.
Great margin. Maybe. don't discount the quality that Chef Boyardee, and I offer this as a sponsorship offer to Chef Boyardee to consider the Roark mix.
Absolutely. We will plug you because dollar value, you nailed it.
Exactly. What was your what was the next one you had in the chamber?
Well, I got, uh, there was, he talked about Tito Puente
Yeah.
and Filacuti. Is that how you say?
Felacuti, yeah.
Felacuti.
This is an Africa of the family father-son gig with but just terrific. I mean,
yeah, so I got the Mambo Cats,
Yep.
Angel the Mambo Cats, and it very much is the whole, like, if you're doing something, like he talked about some parts he wants to do things fast paced these days, other parts when he's thinking in a different mindset he wants to slow things down, and I think this is just one of those times where you're like cooking or this is my style of music if I'm about to go out, because
Right.
hey, left to my own devices, and this shocks a lot of people, but I would never leave the house. I don't even want to talk to people, but I do, and I love it once I get out there. So I actually have to, like, before, like, it's like, I got to be somewhere in 10 minutes. I will actually put on a song like this and do a little mambo. Like, I actually almost get into the routine of, like, it's time to entertain now. I just get that mindset going. And this style of music really helps me because it just, I think I don't know, you most certainly should. This is not going to leave you depressed ever. It's going to put you in a great mood. You're going to get shit done. This is my type of cooking music too, especially if you're assembling a bunch of stuff. It's like you're making a shepherd's pie or something like that, where it's like, you got the 4 or 5, 8 steps to it, and it's like you just kind of get through it because, let's move on to the next thing. Like, I don't know, I
Sure.
love this style of music, and it's fun.
I think, you are truly in the people-pleasing business. This is what you have to do. And you can't go in cold. You got to warm up to it.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah,
So this is
exactly.
I think that's a great track for that exact purpose. I think you nailed it.
Well, so once again, it's about me. Sorry,
It's
Stephen.
Yes. We're this is really the Brad Roark mix with just a little Stephen Bulger sprinkled in for flavoring.
He just needs to give me
But
an
aren't they
excuse
all?
to
I
talk.
think I think that's there's at the beginning of your show, isn't there a little something that comes along the bottom? It's just a notification that this is truly it's a Brad Roark mix.
Right. You might see some other people, but don't let that distract you.
Along the same vein, in ramping things up, I went with the English beat and ranking full stop, and for a number of reasons. It didn't come up in conversation, but I do know that for a fact that the ska movement was a great interest to Stephen in high school and in university. Played it a lot, and it was just I think that it's just so joyous, so universally joyous, that it would be something. And I used it as a vehicle in my list exactly the same way you did. When Stephen says that there's sort of an ebb and flow through his day, where there's intense periods and then there's slower periods and then there's focus periods and there's meeting people periods. I threw that one in as a little bit of a disruptive force, just to shake things down a little bit, because it's just such a perfect piece of music from the time. Yeah. And works extremely well now. I'll put that one on. I'll be just happy all day.
Well, it is such a great song. Do you think there's, and this is, I didn't look up the song, like I know the English beat and I know the song. Do you think Ranking Roger and Ranking Full Stop had any, I wonder if he got to call this, like, I don't know, it's just something that came to mind, Ranking Roger and then the name of the song.
Well, it's interesting. The live performance of the English beat was focused visually on Ranking Roger. He was,
yeah.
He while I think Wakeling, had a lot more musical duties, that the thing about Ranking Rogers was not only his slick dance moves and singing, but he was a visual counterpoint to everything else that was going on, which was pretty fantastic in itself. But when Wakeling and Ranking Roger moved on to the General Public project after,
yeah,
you could see well that the focus was less animated and much more focused on the music, for sure. The live performance was a little less manic and was definitely more of a straightforward presentation, and a lot more focused on the visual. I think you're exactly right in terms of the way that the music was set up. But I think that the anchor to it all was just how joyous, like absolutely joyous, the genre was. And certainly within the genre, the English beat was just a fantastic part of it.
Yeah. Hey, he mentioned Michael Kiwanuka, and it's so funny. I think by now my memory is just the worst. And he mentioned Michael's name, and I'm like, oh, where do I know that from? It's like I almost have to like, can we just stop right now? Oh, now, okay, I have to hear the song, and I remember he has such a beautiful voice, and he and I looked him up because I was not familiar with him. I hadn't come across him ever until maybe 3 years ago when Big Little Lies came out. That's that great little miniseries, Crave or Netflix or HBO or something like that. And he has the theme song for it. It's one of his songs, and it's absolutely gorgeous, and the voice is gorgeous. So I had that in mind, and I chose One More Night just because I really like the song, and then I get obsessed with these people, so I listen to like his entire music catalog pretty much, and it's from his album that's and I'm going to edit this, that's for sure. Oh, Black Man in a White World. And that was an album he really, really, really struggled with, because he had some success, and then the record company was waiting forever for this. He submitted an album and they're like, no, not going to happen. And he's like, you're right. Like he didn't fight them on it. He says, yeah, you're right, this isn't any good. And he was at a loss. And then he brought in a guy, and they started working so bare bones that a lot of his songs started with clapping on this. He would just clap out a beat, and he loves country music. So he played country guitar to a lot of the songs on this, and it emanated from that. And then they layered over it and they brought in drums, and then it became something other than a country song. But he was he always says, it's like, I really like country music. And I was pissed off that a black man, it was so surprising, and it wasn't acceptable for a black man to play country music commercially. And I think Darius Rucker has something to say about that, but sure. But nonetheless, you're kind of right. And but it's amazing to listen to this album and to know that a lot of these songs came from a country song, and just like, and it really is the simplicity of like of clapping against your thigh or that, and just starts with that, and then he just puts in this country guitar and just start going at it. And I don't know, I love the process of everything. I like the reasoning behind everything, and this song, I absolutely love it. I love his voice. This has a very Leon Bridges feel to it a lot of the time too, and nothing wrong with that. So yeah. So once he mentioned that name, I knew it. I looked it up. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be fun. So thanks, Stephen, for about 4 hours I spent on this artist.
Oh yeah, I mean, Stephen can take you down some crazy rabbit holes in terms of art, music, and literature and things. So buckle up. There's more to come. I mean, he's just such a vast knowledge of such fascinating, interesting things in the world. So.
Well, and when he says, "Oh, come to my studio," like, when you're in town, come to the studio. I'm like, I don't think you have enough time for me, because he's going to introduce, like, he's going to show me a catalog of something that's like, the 60,000 pictures of was it Vivian Maier, and I'm like, well, you can come back tomorrow, because I'm just going to sit here and go through this. Come on,
you might have to be in residence.
Absolutely. So yeah, so Stephen scares me of like of introducing me to stuff that I cannot say no to.
speaking of Stephen's gallery, my next choice was informed um, based on an exhibition that he had of photographs from tree planting, which was just, they were sort of just terrific content, storytelling, visuals were stunning. And at the same time where we were creating our lists, the Edinburgh conference was happening. So my next pick was purely environmental. And I went with 5 Years by David Bowie from The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust, which was an apocalyptic song, obviously, but recorded in 1972, which is kind of predates a lot of people's vast concerns about how we're taking the planet, into a dark spinning hole. But that one popped into mind a number of reasons. I know that Stephen's a huge Bowie fan, always has been. Stephen certainly introduced me to Bowie's music, and for that I've been always grateful. But it was picking that song for Stephen's list was more about connecting the dots of the presentation at his gallery, that exhibition, the timing of the climate conference, and sort of the path. And it's a song I've loved, always loved. The storytelling, which is kind of interesting, about the verses told from a child's perspective in sort of 1 and 2, and then sort of Bowie jumping in. But again, it's a Mick Ronson project with Bowie too, and the percussion on it is fantastic. I had to throw that in. Maybe that's a selfish choice. I think I probably, I was trying. I think I was just trying to do that myself.
Well, I don't know if you've noticed, but there's an addition to the background. I put up my Christmas tree last night.
I saw your yes.
Yeah, it's I was at a nursery, and I saw these twigs, and I'm like, that's my Christmas tree this year, indeed. And
oh, look at that.
Yeah,
nice.
So I've had little Bowie for quite some time, and the Christmas tree's up early, and I'm flaunting Mr. Bowie.
Very well done. Well done.
Hey, another song that I love Song Exploder. I think I've told you about this whole deep dive into one song, and he has the master tracks, and he's kind of like the Oprah Winfrey of like interviewing these musicians, because he gets deep. Like, they just open up, like they tell him exactly, and there's I don't think there's a lot of pushing and prodding. Like, it's amazing that they just go to deep spots, and it's phenomenal how much I learned from that and learn about the process. And I think I was still thinking of the previous song, the Michael Kiwanuka song, and the singer on this song. So it's actually a duet of Alicia Keys and Sampha, a British guy, and he reminds me of Michael a little bit. His voice, and what I kind of think back to this song is essentially they're singing the same verse. She sings it, then he sings it, but has totally different, like, a feel to it. She's a little more hopeful with it. And the story behind this is that he just lost his mother about 2 weeks previous to being in the studio with her. Oh. And they knocked this out. She flew to London, and they recorded this within 3 days. And the process was brilliant to watch. Much different headspaces, but that was not the intention. He was just supposed to come in and maybe just add a little bit of background. He's worked with so many people, and he's like one of those key ingredients to many musicians. He's worked Beyonce and a number of people where they just need something, and he's that guy. He's always the something. But this, he takes a much more prominent role, and I love the sound of this, and it makes me think of it's just I love it's a simple concept. It's something they didn't see coming, and it reminds me a little bit, and it's probably inaccurate, but Kanye West, when the 2 words that we talked about last week with Travis McKenzie, that song, it's such a simple thing to think about, and then when you pull it off, it's like, oh, that's brilliant. simplicity. And it's just a matter of them singing the exact same thing, but coming in a different place. And I just think this is a gorgeous song. This is a song that he could easily play in his studio. It's going to please a lot of people because I think Alicia Keys pleases every palate.
Sure.
But nonetheless, I don't know. It's just one of those songs that just kind of came to mind, and I just wanted to throw it in there. And I don't think it's very deep, but it's just a nice song.
That's great. No, that's a great story to go along with it. That's fantastic. I was sticking with, I don't know if I was sticking with a theme. I was running with a couple things. And in terms of visual artists, I don't think you can top the stage presence or stage presentation of Talking Heads.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No matter what your dear friend Haney Toil will tell you.
To interrupt, my good friend, my business partner, just came back from Manhattan, and they saw the David Byrne show.
Oh, fantastic!
He said it's mind-blowing.
Yeah,
mind-blowing. Okay, carry on.
and that's exactly it. This is an artist who is intent on the visual experience being as valid as the musical experience right from the get-go. I don't think you can do too much on the postage stamp size stage at CBGB in '77, but moving forward, and this is more connected to the art school. David is an accomplished photographer as well, which is I'm trying to link. And then choosing Ezimbra, which I did from the album Fear of Music, was sort of a way, and it just came to me. I mean, it has all of the components of a very cool world beat, relying heavily on African themes, and relying heavily on the band's conceptual work visually. And I also know that that Steve loves Talking Heads, so
yeah,
those were easy gears to assemble and try to make work. I just thought it was a pick that came naturally to me, and it was one of the ones that was in my head while we were speaking to Stephen. I was like,
yeah,
that's that.
Yeah,
it just checked a lot of boxes. That's not necessarily what I was looking for in my picks, but that one just was very organic in the way it happened.
And how much time did Stephen spend in Africa? Because the fact that I have many songs with congas on them. This is lots of congas right up front. We have a lot of African influence here.
I don't know that Stephen has spent much time in Africa, to be honest with you. I just think that he's always, maybe, and I don't want to speak out of turn, because I don't know all of his travels. He likes to keep some of his adventures secret, which I don't blame him. But I don't know about that. I just know that he's just always sort of loved it. I think he's kind of always loved the vibe.
Yeah.
And who wouldn't? I mean, it's not something that everyone's necessarily exposed to, but I know that in our youth, African music certainly played a role, no question.
Yeah. Yeah. Carry on. Sorry.
No, we would. The Carleton radio station was CKCU, and a buddy, a common friend of ours, Jim McCarricker, was the late night DJ several nights a week, and he was kind enough, because we'd be a little geezed and call him up and make some requests. And the great thing about CKCU, I think one of the all-time greatest university radio stations in Canada, just had such a vast collection. And we could literally, choose an obscure African artist or an obscure Canadian artist, and there you go. It's on the airwaves in a few minutes.
What a lost art to phone the DJ.
Phoning the DJ, phoning CKCU.
Wow, and waiting, and is the DJ, he or she, just trying to blow you off by saying, I'm going to play your tune, and how long do you wait to see if that comes through, And
this is the great thing about college radio too, is that it was as experimental as it was, and anything else. So at 2 a.m, they might not have had a lot of other people calling in,
Absolutely.
you know, except a couple, people with some time on their hands.
Yes. You the dog ate your homework
The
again, Mr.
dog was
Bingham.
busy eating our homework, and CKCU got the call, and we did that quite often. And one of my last pick of the night reflects that experience entirely. So
I do love your last pick. All 4 hours of it. Moving right along.
I had to double clutch on that when I looked at it and said, "Oh, it's a 42-minute track."
I was like, well,
I
it's the
think
last
that uses
song.
up all the memory on your Commodore 64 for the Roark mix.
I went Sonic Youth, and the
Nice.
impetus for this was he mentioned Juno. And
Yeah.
I'm not sure how he got on the topic of Juno, but I think he likes songs from the soundtrack, or he was referencing one song.
And a
this
great
is
film. I mean,
yeah.
It's just such a fucking great movie.
So good on so many levels, and I can't believe that it's fucking art, people. It's a film, and for people to be pissed off about some of that dialogue where she was like, she's talking about like giving up for adoption, and she's and then the Chinese adoption came along, and she, the writing was like, I don't know, they're like popping them out of like one of those t-shirt guns, that type of thing, giving them away. Like, it is art, people. Like, I mean, this is not it boggles my mind what people can get bent out of shape over. I'm like, you're watching a film. This is not a political statement. This is not something that you hold her feet to the fire. Like, she's saying the lines. Come on.
Yeah.
I don't get it. Anyways.
You could see that particular film just not being everyone's cup of tea. I think you have to be slightly bent in the first place. And they're my favorite type of people who are going to be able to appreciate that.
Absolutely. So if you don't like it, don't watch it.
It's fine.
God.
Yeah, I'm sure maybe there's some sort of Housewives of Minneapolis on the W network that you can watch. I don't know, but I understand it's not everyone's cup of tea, but
it's not supposed to be.
But it's not supposed to be. Yeah, it's supposed to be a little challenging.
Yeah, so for challenging, Christmas music's coming up, and God, there's going to be a few songs that are going to get banned again every year.
Yeah.
They're going to go deeper.
I'm writing a stern note to the newspaper.
So they did a cover of the Carpenters, Superstar. And they did, it's a haunting start.
It's haunting.
Seriously lo-fi. And, but what I love about, there was some talk about they had an infatuation with Karen Carpenter, like healthy or unhealthy. I'm like, who cares? But they do have, Sonic Youth does have a history of being infatuated with some singers, because in the early to mid 80s, they were infatuated with Madonna. So they changed, or they made another band, the two of them. And instead of Sonic Youth, it was called Ciccone Youth, because that's her surname. And they put out an album. So I do think that, I love them even more, because that is my style. If I get onto something, I will go deep all night long. I will get every piece of information and obsess over something. So I appreciate their obsession. Their obsession lasts for a year or two. Mine usually lasts until like I pass out, but then I forget about the next day. But in any event, this is a nod to him enjoying film, as we know he does, and the music that is associated with this. And it was a good soundtrack. I know I think at the time, I think I bought the CD. I think it was before the beautiful days of Spotify, where the artist got a fraction of a penny. But they got my dollar.
They got your dollar, which is great.
Yeah.
And just as a adjunct to that, the funny thing about the Carpenter story, of course, it's a tragic story, but Karen Carpenter was a hell of a drummer. Like, you need to find out what a kick-ass rock and roll drummer Karen Carpenter was. I mean, she did not know. She and her brother got grouped into sort of the Captain and Tennille thing, and the great tragedy of her loss, beyond the obvious, is the fact that she had so much more than to give musically than the Carpenters represented, you know, as you know, soft rock, you know, very that soft rock innocence, which is a big part of their thing. But she was an absolute kick-ass drummer, and there are some clips on YouTube of her drumming, and I highly recommend looking them up.
Oh, this is going on the website for sure. Absolutely.
Oh,
I'll find
freaking
one.
awesome.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
You know, it falls in the same boat as, like, you know, when, you know, many people die, it's sad, but I just remember, you know, so for her, it's like, what would have happened when she was like 60, and like later on, it's just like, was she like went totally in another direction and gave us something really cool and special and something we didn't see coming ever. You know, it's just like, when celebrities die, I'm like, they are human beings, so it shouldn't be a big deal but Philip Seymour Hoffman, when he died, I'm just like, damn it, I just wanted to see what else. Like, I was ready for 30 more years of interesting characters, not so much about him the human. It's like, oh my god, he's a god, but just like, what else you got, you know? Like, you've done so much and been in so many of my favorite films. I'm just like, I can't wait to see what someone writes for you, and you don't get that. Although his son is in the Paul Thomas Anderson film. He's the lead in that.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
And our friend, you introduced me to Haim, and Ice-T, one of the girls, is the lead in that too, where, you know, Paul Thomas Anderson's good friends with the family. And he said, you're acting.
That's Licorice Pizza.
Licorice Pizza.
Yeah.
And she'd never acted before. And he said, nope, you're it.
Yeah.
So it's the two of them, Paul Thomas, Philip Seymour Hoffman's son.
And when you look at him in the trailer, I haven't seen the film, but I will. It's obvious. Hey, fun fact: he played. He was in a film called Owning Mahoney. I don't know if you know that film, but and it was about a guy who rips off a bank penny by penny.
Yes, I did see it. Yes.
The true story is that was a guy, the true story, Mahoney, and his name isn't Mahoney, but it's close to that. But he went to my high school. The character in the true story who was incarcerated for that crime, not only did he go to my high school, but he had a career in bank security following his incarceration.
Wow, it's kind of like that Leo DiCaprio film, you know, where he was ripping off everything, and then, you know, if you're smart, the FBI says, you're working for us now. You know all the tricks.
Right. Catch Me If You Can.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's it. Yeah. So even double clutching on this, I think as soon as I can see Licorice Pizza, that's a film that could put me back in the theater. No question.
Wow.
I think it's Alana Haim who's starring in that. But it looks, and I never judge a film by its trailer. It looks like it checks all the boxes for me.
Yeah, I think, like you said, if you like something like Juno, I think this is your thing. Yeah. All right, what you got?
Stephen mentioned some of when we were speaking to him, some of his interest in sort of the classic arrangements that he enjoys, and for that reason, I went back to Ryuichi Sakamoto, who has provided soundtrack, beautiful arrangements for so many films.
Yeah.
But the one that I had in my head immediately after the conversation was the track Rain, and it was from the film The Last Emperor, and just a terrific track. And I think this is me going back to considering the pace and ebb and flow of a day at the gallery, where there would be a point where you needed just a little bit of that to be a part of the day. and it was a track that I've always loved. I mean, it's come across playlists, and I actually have I have that soundtrack on vinyl, and it gets pulled out, and it's always one that makes you just stop. I think it's a beautiful arrangement. It's out of my general genre love, but I think it speaks to how to the track, that it'll go on. I'm just happy as a clam. Love it. Love
Well,
it.
I'm glad you explained why you did it, because the fact that, I saw this, I'm like, not familiar. And I played it, I'm like, oh my God, this is gorgeous. But my question to you is that I'm amazed you remember individual tracks. For this, I think I play the whole album and it would just be like ethereal to me, and just I wouldn't be able to pull out one. And of course I've been playing this guy only the last 24 hours. I'm like, I want to go deeper in this guy. And it's been driving music. I'm not an asshole anymore. This is very good for my driving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think what I love most about the track is it has a repetitive nature right from the outset that builds on its repetition.
Yeah.
Which is reflective, obviously, of its title, but it has such a almost like a pop sensibility built into it, on the build and the build and the build, and it becomes far more complicated a piece as it moves forward, and it just seems to be layers and layers and layers, and it's an exciting piece of music to listen to.
Yeah,
it requires a little bit of patience, but it's an experience. It's a complete trip.
Absolutely. Yeah. I loved it, and thank you, because this is not my usual wheelhouse, but good Lord, this is beautiful stuff. Hey, as soon as he mentioned Billy Bragg, I'm like, here we go.
Sure.
And I only think I've referenced the girl that lived across the street from us at Kingston about every other episode we've had, but I was like crazy head over heels for Thames, and she introduced me to Billy Bragg. So obviously I stole her cassette, and I'm pretty sure it was a cassette actually. And even though we had CDs, but that was the time where it was like some cassettes, some CDs. So you had that player that had everything in one. And and this will always be in my top 10 songs of all time, Walk Away Renee. I have it's not so much memorize the song, it's a matter of he just has so many snippets in here. Love is strange, you got to take the crunchy with the smooth. Just that phrasing, I love that. And just talking about, he was in love with her, but then she started dating the guy with the jacket, like it was a football jacket, but whatever. Dating with the guy with the jacket, but he referenced him as saying, and then she started dating Mr. Potato Head. I'm like, that is exactly how you would say it in high school. It's like, just a guy who I just strongly dislike. Let's just call him Mr. Potato Head. I don't care. And I always remember, I love the British phrasing most of the time, and calling the fun fair. And he also said, love is strange. It's like a ride at the fun fair. It's fun and exciting. Oh yeah, it's scary once you're on it, but as soon as you're off it, you can't wait to get back on again. That line, I think about it once a day. It's unbelievable. And so many things. You're the most illegible bachelor. Just every fucking line of the song makes me laugh and makes me think, what a great writer.
Yeah, and obviously he's willing to do a lot of covers. In Life's a Ride and Spy versus Spy, I really glommed onto his early work. He kind of jumped the shark with me on a few occasions throughout his career. I've seen Billy a dozen times, I would say.
And how is he?
Live, in the early days when it was just him and his his guitar and his stagehand best friend Wiggy.
Love it.
His friend. who they've since had a falling out. Actually, this is if you like Billy.
I love it. This is the show of show and tell.
This book, Billy Bragg, still suitable for minors. I got it for list price $24.95, $5.99 at my local bookseller. But a good backstory. It's a bit of a deep read, but it does explain some of his early work, which you would like. But of course, he's deeply conflicted because he was obviously so entrenched in the labor movement, left-wing movement in Britain, but he's been deeply criticized. He recently sold his house in London for £3 million, I think it was £3 million, to a banker at Stikeman Elliott.
Of course, that goes over great.
He erodes people's image of Billy, the busker going up to the coal mines. And he references that so much in his early work. I think Billy's conflicted because musical success. Now, to be fair, I think he bought that house for not a whole ton of dough. And right. I think in different times of London, he wouldn't be under the microscope so much. But when Billy moved on to swimming with the dolphins and moving the goalposts, he kind of jumped the shark for me, and I lost interest. But the early Billy, I play that all the time. I agree with you 100%. And I know Stephen's a fan, as he mentioned before, but those early tunes really are absolutely fantastic. Levi Stubbs' Tears, to my mind, is the greatest Billy Bragg song in his holster, and I love that riff. But I think that the qualities of Billy Bragg are in his off-song storytelling that you mentioned.
Yeah.
The reality of relationships, and he's had some exciting relationships that have ended poorly, and they've been a great source for material too. I think like any musician, I think the only way you're going to get a good song is out of a bad relationship, right?
Oh, absolutely. If you're happy, yeah. Come on.
That was a great pick.
But to your point too, of like people being pissed off of him selling a $3 million house, £3 million house to a banker. Don't dig too deep. And I think it was yesterday, just reading some stuff about someone talking about someone selling out. It might have been Lou Reed or someone else, and they said, yeah, rock and roll is supposed to be avant-garde. It's supposed to be against the establishment. And he says, all right, but you do know that we record at a record company. The record company is owned by a conglomerate always, and they do bad things. So let's not dig too deep, okay?
Yeah, I think that's the deal with the devil, and you got to get into bed, with an enemy at some point if you're going to want that music ever to come out. And the good news is that's not the new reality.
No, it's not.
The only problem is it's difficult to monetize it now.
Yeah,
and it's
we'll have another discussion about musicians and NFTs soon.
Let's keep that one in the holster.
What do you got?
I rolled with another soundtrack song, and it's If You Want to Sing Out, Sing Out. And although it was released in Cat Stevens song, released on Tea for the Tillerman, my reference to this again is visual, and it's film based, because I think it was easy to get a vibe that Steve is a film guy, visual guy, and the film Harold and Maude completely connects all the films we've spoken about today.
Yeah,
it has the absurdity, it has the awkwardness, it has some difficult themes, and it's so messed up that is perfect. And I chose that song. I mean, the entire soundtrack is based on Cat Stevens songs, if I'm not mistaken. I've only seen the film about 20 times, but it's still one of my all-time greats, because it's got a great story, great song, it has the perfect Jaguar car in it.
Yeah,
that, that gets slightly modified.
slightly modified. I
Purpose
love
built.
that. You know a thing or two about car modifications.
So it just seemed, and I think it was more of a personal connection for Stephen because we've seen that film so many times, and
Yeah.
it's just that song is a reminder of the film, and the film is certainly a reminder because I've seen it with Stephen so many times. It's just so joyous, it's so absurd, and the song, I can't listen to that song without thinking of the movie.
That's the whole idea. I love it. That's so good. And there's a few more movie references coming, and one of them is yours.
Yeah, I mean, and I wonder if I'm doing Stephen a disservice because I seem to be straying away from from the core interest in what he presents at the gallery, and I'm just going on with these sort of childish things that I seem to be referencing. But
but even there, Chris, because the fact that photos are of so many different things, right? They encapsulate experiences in that. So I don't think so at all. Like, I think that's just part of the big picture, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, God, I don't think so at all. Yeah. And I think that's, he talks about mixing mediums too, and he loves that. So no, I think we're right. I think you nailed it. Oh, you nailed it.
He's given just such great advice that he does to his customers, I'm sure, and to his friends. And in speaking to him about photography, when I was asking, he always said, just collect or buy what makes you happy.
Absolutely.
If it's your home, it should make you happy every time you look at it.
Absolutely. It's the same thing for I just did a wine chat, and I'm not a big fan of food and wine pairing, or like, oh, it brings out this in the food. I'm like, just drink what you like. If you drink what you like, don't force yourself to have a Pinot Noir because every wine geek likes it. If you like big chunky cabs, well, you're wrong. But but
Thank you.
just do it. So come on, man. And like anything, it's if you're happy, everything's going to taste better. You're going to have a better date night. Everything's going to work out. Jeez Louise, I love that. And okay, we're going to get off film references soon, but he mentioned Cameron Crowe, and as soon as he did, I'm like, well, I have a plan, because I love Say Anything. I love Almost Famous. I love a lot of his stuff, and too much, especially to Say Anything. I've seen that about 50 times, and love that soundtrack. But so what I wanted to find out is that what's Cameron Crowe listening to today? And so I was looking at that, and he just shot a film, the Zoo, something, Miracle Zoo or something like that, and starring Matt Damon. And I love this process about, so the song is by Shugo Tokumaro, and it's Saginichi. And this Japanese artist, he keeps a diary of his dreams. So as soon as he wakes up, apparently he dreams a lot, and he writes his dreams. And that's where all these songs come from. He lives in a dream world, and he's been known to play 40 instruments in every song. Wow. Or in some songs. And it's just like, it could be a spoon, it could be whatever. But it's a lot of things going on. He makes beautiful music, which is kind of funny for having so many things going on, a lot of these songs. But this was on the Cameron Crowe list of a playlist that he sent to Matt Damon. Matt Damon wasn't sure about this film, so he was probably sent him the script, and then along with the script, he said, and this is what I'm listening to. And this was on the mixtape he sent to Matt Damon. And so, that's his way of, just as with me, as with you, you get common ground, or music is a starter for many conversations, or it's, bringing people together deeper. And I think that formed a bit more of a bond with him and Matt. Started talking, Matt accepted the role. And what Cameron Crowe does before scenes, instead of giving them a pep talk per se, and giving them lots of notes on exactly how he wants this and that and the other thing, he just says, I want you to listen to this song. So he gives them a song. They listen to it. He says, okay, it's time to start now. And Matt Damon ate it up. He says, that's the best way to get in the mood. I know exactly where he wants me to be. Listening to this song, go straight to shooting.
Nice.
Love it. Yeah, and you just kind of knew Cameron Crowe of all directors would use that technique.
Sure.
You know, it just absolutely lives and breathes and bleeds music. He's I don't know if anyone has anything negative to say about him, but I can't imagine it, because he is my type of person that I think I always want to listen to. Always want to talk to. I was lucky enough that he was in Vancouver for a summer, and he would come to the restaurant probably once a week, and never chatted with him because I don't like invading people's privacy. Sweetheart, you know, absolutely beautiful, gracious. Yeah, so as a human being, I think he's a good guy. I don't know him. I just know that he most certainly was very polite and loved the restaurant and loved what we did. So he's good in my books.
That's terrific. Nice. That's great. Yeah, I agree with you completely. I think that when someone with such a fantastic musical vocabulary can convert that to an on-screen experience, I think it's magic. And he's pretty good at doing that.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to hit you over the head with it. It's just, you know, this. Yeah. It's kind of just part of the DNA of what he does. You know.
I rolled with a song. My next pick is Family Snapshot, Peter Gabriel, from his third solo record. And it wasn't necessarily, although I thought about it, it's like, oh, Snapshot, you know, Stephen's Gallery. It's not it wasn't necessarily supposed to be a photographic reference, but the tale, and you know, Gabriel was reading this story about the guy who shot George Wallace, and it's a crazy tale. It's a beautiful song. It's very I mean, it's certainly a song about being damaged, being hurt. Mm-hmm. But the guy Arthur Bremer who shot George Wallace, he didn't do it for political reasons, although there was enough reasons probably to take a pot shot at George Wallace for his political stand, political policies. He shot George Wallace to be famous.
He was Kim Kardashian before Kim.
For the exact reason, and he shot him at a certain point of the day so that he could be on the evening news. And that's it's the description, you know, in the song, that, you know, the first words are, you know, the streets are lined with camera crews, everywhere he goes is news. And what I thought connected to Stephen's visual business is the way that Gabriel painted the picture of that scenario and did it so beautifully. You know, telling that story. A lot of people I know immediately connected the story to the Kennedy assassination, but and I'm sure that a lot of it fits there too. But knowing the backstory and knowing that Bremer was entirely focused on being famous, and this was his way to be famous, which is an incredibly dangerous way to go about business, go about your life. But maybe that was a reflection, you know, later on with you know, Squeaky Fromm, with you know, we can go down a pretty deep hole of all these people too, about the Lennon assassination and things like that. But this song just seemed to pick, for me, the pieces of a visual description within the context of what Gabriel's calling sort of the family, snapshot and collection. And I was speaking when you and I were speaking with Stephen, I'm pretty fascinated about his collection of people's wedding photos.
I know, and he flipped to it. That was so I got to see it, right?
It's incredible. I mean, it is incredible visual experience to see all that, because it's something that we all see. We probably may have had in our homes, not mine, but it wasn't. But
Not mine.
not yet.
Not ever.
But anyway, it seemed to be a good fit, and I do know that Stephen's a big Gabriel guy too, so he probably isn't going to argue with that pick. I'm such a suck, just softballs.
Hey, so you picked a Lou Reed song. I picked Velvet Underground.
Okay.
Yeah. And I went Venus and Furs and the live version.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like it's almost like I like Velvet Underground. I like Lou Reed. And I think he may have mentioned them, but come on, man. Andy Warhol was their manager. There's a strong tie into these worlds, you know.
Yeah. So you and I were on exactly the same page, and in the service of saving time, I went with White Light, White Heat for pretty much the exact same reasons that you went with your pick. It has a great, I think, a pre-punk edge to it, and it was at the time where they had moved past the Warhol era. Nico was no longer in the band, and it was getting back to sort of 3.5 or 4 chord songs, and it's a throwdown, and I wanted to connect 2 picks together. So maybe if you don't mind, I'll jump in.
Oh, yeah.
And I connected that to Laurie Anderson's Sharky's Day.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, their famous, long, wonderful relationship was terrific. 2 incredible artists. So you could imagine what went on under that roof. Just
no kidding.
Discussions, the visual art, the musical art, and if you're familiar with that album, Mr. Heartbreak, it's a trip. The whole album's a trip. I mean, Sharky's Day is just a track that I picked because it's my particular favorite. But Stephen gave me a call years ago and said, "Hey, let's catch Laurie Anderson at the music hall in Danforth, just down the street from me." And it was very towards the end of Lou's life, and he was just sitting in on guitar. I mean, you're seeing this brilliant performance by Laurie Anderson, and I think that's an experience that people have to check out on video as well.
What instrument did she play predominantly in a live setting? She was known for, you know, she actually created an instrument, like some violin weird thing.
It looks like a science fair. It's a bunch of tables with non-traditional instruments. Electronic, non-electronic. There's some harmonic instrumentation. She has an incredible way to use loopers in sequencers in her presentation of live music, and you really need to buckle up for that experience, because it is a singular thing, and you just prepare yourself for just an amazing musical treat. It's I could see it not being a lot of people's favorite if you're looking for, because it's certainly not pop music. It's interesting music, and it's so layered. And again, in the same way that Ryuichi does his, you know, Laurie Anderson builds and builds and builds, and retreats and builds and builds and builds, and it's an incredible experience. She's vastly underrated for her contribution to music, certainly in the 80s. But again, as a visual artist, and this is more in keeping with maybe why I picked it for Stephen's list. And to be fair to Stephen, he truly, brought the music to my attention, and it was a big sort of on our turntable list for years, but incredible. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
scene.
Yeah, you weren't. If you came here for a Jack Johnson sing along, you're not going to be happy.
Yeah, yeah.
Hey, he right from the get go, Brian Eno,
Right. Yes.
huge in his life. I'm like, Brian Eno has pretty much touched upon almost every band that I like. Like, it's
Yes.
unbelievable. Good Lord, how many people he's worked with. And I knew of that before. And then I went a deeper dive. I'm like, there's pages of who he's produced and worked with. Like, it's crazy. And then there was a project that he did in 1971 with John Cale. And they met together in 1971, and I think it was pretty rocky. And there was in the unauthorized biography, John Cale tells a biographer something about, and then he just started attacking me with chopsticks, and and that's when I decided I needed my own hotel room. They were working in the studio, and the amount of drugs that Brian Eno has done, it's unbelievable. Like, Bowie had to get away from him. If you outlast Bowie, well done.
Yeah.
So I like this song, Spinning Away. It's and I think part of it is that I didn't put a Talking Heads song on here. You did. And I was thinking, and I listened to the song, and damn, it just reminds me of Talking Heads. Just that guitar coming in, kind of the melodic voice, and then it's a build as well. And I don't know, it's just such a great song, and I knew I had to get Brian Eno in there somewhere, somehow. But
absolutely,
man, like, how do you nail down Brian Eno? It's like there's 1,000 different directions I could have went with this reference.
Putting Eno in suggests that for someone who hasn't met Stephen in person, you've absolutely nailed that one, because I know for a fact that he's a big Eno guy.
Yeah.
And it shows.
Yeah. So that, and I've got one more, and it's just a cover, Pete Townsend, Save It for Later.
Yep.
And you did English Beat, and this is an English Beat song.
Sure.
And I love it because he and David Gilmour, was it Deep End or something like that? They formed a band. It was supposed to be a super group. Lasted a couple of years. They recorded a bunch of stuff. Whenever they played this song, and they couldn't figure this out for the longest time. They were sitting around for a day or so, and so they phone up Wakeling. And so the way Wakeling describes it is that I get this call, it's Pete Townsend. I think he said, sure.
Yeah.
It's like, he said, okay, so David and I are sitting around, we cannot figure out the chord of this. And it was like DAG, something, blah, blah, blah. And Wakeling sets him straight, and Pete's like, oh, thank God, because I almost ruined my hand trying to get it around the neck. And so in any event, I just love shit like that. Like, one of the phenomenal, Gilmour and Townsend, phenomenal musicians, phenomenal with their craft, and they couldn't, they couldn't figure it out. And I just love a simple call. They're like, oh, of course, that's it, So anyways, I
like your pick, because DAG are the chords to Baba O'Reilly.
Oh, okay, there you go. Nice. That's the only song I can play. No, I played bass in my buddy's basement band, and we had like 2 or 3 songs. Rocky Mountain High, I could nail that on bass.
Sure.
I think Baba O'Reilly was in there. I think somehow we dumbed it down just enough that I could stare at it, not move, no one distract me, and I could figure it out.
Well, you're picking a tough fight there if you're trying to imitate the bass lines of John Entwistle. But if you can, because he's filling in with 30-second notes and these long, terrific runs. The aux is pretty much untouchable in the lexicon of rock and roll basses. But I could see you hanging on a few DAGs, because you can play the E string.
And this is all, I don't know what you're talking about. I was just like, put your hand here, here, and just don't waver.
just roll it over. It's a beauty.
And just remember, the bass drives the song. Really? Yeah. I'm driving the bus here.
Well, I think we discussed this in another show where I was describing going to see The Who in 1980 outdoors at CNE. And of course, when you're, I don't know, 1980, I was in grade 9, I guess. And, you're general seating, general admission, and you're at the front. And when the Who started playing, Entwistle's bass was like a mule kicking your chest for 3 hours, or maybe they didn't play for 3 hours. And it was just, honest to God. And it predated the sound systems that they have now. They actually had bass bins. And it was like getting CPR done in 75th notes through the entire evening. Just awesome. I love that.
But yet you're doubting the mix of alcohol and whatever else is in your system. It's like, is this just the bass, or am I having a jammer?
Here's my vow to you. The next time we're together under my roof, you will be rocking the bass, and we're going to kick out Baba O'Reilly. As bad as it's going to be, you're going to rock it.
I think I could do Rocky Mountain High better.
Well, I don't want to do that one. So
okay.
The band's going to break up immediately.
What do you got?
The two left out, because we discussed Neil Young, Sugar Mountain, that I picked, was a purely visual pick for me. And I've loved Tom Waits. I just love Tom Waits. I love everything about Tom Waits.
Same. He's my cooking music. You know that? When I cook, it's because I can put on, I walked into Red Cat Records. It could be our sponsor. Come on, Red Cat, step up. And someone, it was like an estate sale or something. Someone dropped off their entire collection of Tom Waits. I'm like, boom.
Wow. Oh.
Yeah. So anyways, carry on. But I'm in the same boat as you. I love, because it's entertainment. I
was drawn to albums like Frank's Wild Years and so on and so forth. But in 85, he came up with Rain Dogs, 1985. And Tom was dabbling in film. He'd been in films before and stuff, but he starred in a film called Down by Law.
Jim Jarmusch.
Jarmusch film with Roberto Benigni.
And Red Cat's Red Glare. It
was such a great film. And the opening scene is a Louisiana Bayou scene, handheld in a car, and his song "Jockey Full of Bourbon" is on, and it's the opening song. And I was at the film with Stephen, and I just remember, probably, because I'm not a big movie guy. I don't see a lot of film. I don't know. I'm just not a movie guy. And that was probably the first time that in a film that a soundtrack connected so closely with the visual, and my jaw must have been just absolutely on the ground. I loved every second of it. And to this day, I mean, I'll watch that film over and over. It's it's a great film, but B, the way that Tom's soundtrack connected to the visual was something that Steve understood at a very young age, and I still don't have the intellect to comprehend that or put that piece together. So that was a great gift for me, because he just knows all this stuff.
Yeah, and I meant to say Rocket Red Glare, but remember the prison scene? We're all in the prison cell and they start singing, and they keep going around and around and around, and the song just builds.
We all scream for ice cream. Is that scene?
I think so. It's been a long time since I've seen the film. I've seen it twice, but I just remember that it just starts out and then just gets batshit crazy. That's a 5-minute for sure. 5-minute scene.
So I rounded out my list with the Drummers of Burundi, and my original submission to you was a 48-minute track
and a stain. So Stephen, don't put this on shuffle. This has to be the last song.
Track called Extract, but Stephen's connection to enjoying the WOMAD festivals and the albums that the world of music and dance were putting out at the time. The Burundi Drummers is something that will put you in a physical trance. It is so enjoyable, and you need to notify the neighbors and your next of kin, and just put the Burundi drummers on and just let and have at it, because it is absolute trance music. And I probably won't get into some of the details of why I was in a trance while I was listening to this music.
Were you with Stephen?
Absolutely. It was one of the records that we would play quite often. Now, not telling tales out of, because this is magic. A student house that was as much of a dump as a student house could be, and Stephen's room was immaculately appointed, but also included about 100-gallon fish tank with the most exotic fish and a killer stereo and a record collection. It was
Amazing. All in one room.
It was like Xanadu in this dump of a house. His personal section was as tasteful and as complete as any adult's home would hope to be.
Right.
And it was within the sanctity of that room is where a lot of the WOMAD record I recall being played. Lots of music being played. But you see, Stephen's a great musical adventurer and great musical influencer, because he had even through high school, he was willing to take chances on music that you'd never hear on the radio, that wasn't popular. And he informed probably hundreds of people that he's run into and introduced them to incredible new music.
Yeah. And
world music, which I think is something that we've gone back to in our discussion tonight, and I think it was referenced in our chat with Stephen, is that music, world music, plays a big role in the music that he loves.
It's amazing to have that wherewithal in high school, because high school you don't want to go too far from the fray, Yeah. I most certainly did, and I was a little more top 40 than you, I'm sure, but coming from a small town, I don't think we knew anything other than the one radio station,
No, and it's all about access as well. We were a few kilometers from the record peddler, any of the record shops in the late 70s, early 80s that were bringing in music that was blowing people's minds. And I'm not talking about, getting your second copy of Foreigner 4. I'm talking about, music that was coming from overseas, and in fact, some of the great domestic records that were being put out, because the Toronto music scene at that time was incredible. Yeah. And the venues that have all died on the vine for a number of reasons. And the city of Toronto needs to take responsibility for the death of these great venues, because there was never any support from city council about how critical musical venues were to the scene in Toronto.
Yeah.
And some of the great ones. And I'm not talking about this bullshit reincarnation of the El Macambo, just because somebody dumps a ton of dough, it doesn't recreate a venue. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It just creates a Disneyland where the outcomes are entirely predictable. My memories of going to the Elmo were where bands would break up, fight, throw things, wreck instruments. There'd be trouble, not a lot of trouble, but trouble. And now the new ownership, and I don't even care, is trying to sell a bill of goods that it's the same place that, the Stones showed up and played, or that Rough Trade would play, or, all of these great things would happen. It's not, it's Disneyland.
Yeah.
It's a predictable outcome based on a monetary formula, which is so contrary to the whole idea of places that you'd go see music in Toronto.
Yeah.
So
I love it. Let's end on that note.
We will not be sponsored
by the El Macambo. But Red Cat Records, I want you.
Jeff Boyardee.
Right on. See you later.
Thanks.